Welcome to the Agoura Hills City Council meeting. This meeting is being conducted in person in the council chambers and also by utilizing video conferencing. Please silence all cell phones and other electronic devices and do not access Zoom during the live meeting as it will cause interference with the audiovisual system in the council chambers. Tonight's meeting may be viewed on Zoom via the link on the agenda, by live stream on YouTube by entering Agoura Hills City Council meeting in your browser and clicking on the link for July 12, 2023, or view the live or archived meeting on the city's website at agourahillscity.org and click on the Watch Meetings Online button. I will now defer to the city clerk.
Thank you, Mayor Anstead. There will be an opportunity for the public to speak on any item listed on the agenda. Any person in the council chambers who wishes to speak or submit a written comment is requested to complete a comment card for each item and submit them to the clerk prior to the public comment portion of the item. Comments submitted at the meeting will be provided to the City Council for review and filed with the official record. For any person participating remotely, written public comments were requested to be emailed by 4:00 p.m. today and distributed to the City Council in advance of the meeting. To request to speak during public comment, please click on the raise hand button on the Zoom toolbar. Requests to speak must be received prior to the mayor closing the public comment portion of the item. Public testimony for all speakers is limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Written public comments will not be read aloud by the city clerk. For full details, please refer to the public participation section on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now call this meeting to order, and I will defer to Councilmember Wolf for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Why, thank you, Mayor. So if everyone could please stand and place your right hand up over your heart and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You may be seated.
Thank you very much. I will now take a roll call vote. I'll defer to the clerk.
Good evening. Councilmember Lopez.
Here.
Councilmember Sylvester.
Here.
Councilmember Wolf.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber.
Here.
Mayor Anstead.
Here.
Mayor Anstead, you have a quorum.
Thank you very much. There was no closed session held today, so there's no report. We'll now move forward with the approval of the agenda. Will the maker of the motion and a second to approve the agenda please state your names?
Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber moves to approve tonight's agenda.
Thank you. Do I have a second? I will be the second. And,
Yeah.
is that okay? Okay. All right. Anstead will be the second. I'll now defer to the clerk for a roll call vote.
Councilmember Lopez.
Aye.
Councilmember Sylvester.
Aye.
Councilmember Wolf.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber.
Aye.
Mayor Anstead.
Aye.
Mayor Anstead, you have approval 5-0.
Thank you very much. We'll now move into presentations. We have a presentation from the California Association of Public Information Officials, and the president is here, Lyle Wagenek, I believe.
Great job. You got it. Thank you. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. I'm Capio President Lyle Wagenek, and on behalf of the California Association of Public Information Officials, it is an honor to be here today to present Agoura Hills with a Capio Epic Award of Distinction for its popular The Good Life Agoura Hills podcast series. Capio is the leading statewide organization dedicated to advancing public sector communicators and has more than 1,000 members. Capio's Epic Awards are presented annually by Capio to honor outstanding public agency information and communications programs. And this marks the third award in 2 years for the city's strategic communications efforts. Capio also appreciates the City of Agoura Hills' continued efforts to share tips and tools on communications topics with our members. In addition to taking home an award for the podcast at this year's conference, Assistant City Manager Ramiro Adela was also part of a panel of thought leaders during the conference session, Tune In, Secrets to Making Your Local Government Podcast a Success. More than 100 public sector communicators attended the session, and the session was the most highly rated of the conference based on feedback from session attendees. Mr. Adeva has also been a guest on Capio's the Chirp podcast episode, So You Want to Start a Government Podcast. We thank the City of Agoura Hills for its continued commitment to elevate public sector communications, and we look forward to what you will do next. Have a wonderful evening, and thank you.
Thank you. Any city council have a comment on that? Sure. I'll start with Councilmember Lopez.
Well, of course I have a comment on this. Thank you so much for coming to our meeting and for sharing your perspective on our communications and in particular our podcast. This has been a very, very important issue for me personally. As the mayor and I were elected 2 days after the Woolsey fire, or 2 days before the Woolsey fire hit our area, and so communications has been really at the top of our, of the forefront of our minds as council goals for years and years. And to go really from ground zero, from nothing, to being award-winning in just a few years is really just, I'm so filled with pride. I'm so appreciative of your recognition. And, we really couldn't do this without an amazing team. I think Ramiro Adeva was made for this role. He's an amazing engineer and an assistant city manager, but, in his heart of hearts, he's like a DJ or an MC. So anyway, it's just been a perfect combination of hard work by our staff, Erica Diaz, RMG, and really just taking it and running with it. And I'm so proud of our team, and I want to say thank you so much for that recognition, and thanks for the hard work.
Awesome. Councilmember Wolf.
Yes, thank you, and thank you for being here tonight. With an abundance of information available on every topic and so much going on in the world, it's really hard to get people's attention on important issues facing their community. There's just an abundance of information, so finding creative ways to get the information out is such a valuable tool for the community, and so Ramiro, I thank you for taking the charge on this, and for the City Council for having the foresight to do something different, thinking outside the box, to get the information out to the community. So I think this is very well deserved, and congratulations.
Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber.
I think my council members have said it all, so congratulations. I was actually going to make a snide comment to Ramiro, and then I remembered that this is a public meeting, so I will do it offline. But congratulations, and thank you for the recognition. We are all very proud of you and the staff and all the hard work that's gone into the podcast. Thank you.
Council members.
I agree with my fellow council members. Thank you very much for the award, and we are so proud of Ramiro. I really look forward to it every month. I'm like, who's coming up next? And I have to say, that last little video you did for the Bruno Mars concert was amazing. So I thoroughly enjoy it, and I'm really proud of your whole team that created. So well done. Thank you.
And I'll just add one extra comment. I think maybe we need to give him a promotion to director, Adeva, after he directed me in the AH Go spot. So I appreciate that, and all good stuff. But I think it's great with the podcasting. You've done a fantastic job on that. So thank you again for kind of putting the city in the limelight with that podcast. Thank you. So we'll now move to Intergovernmental Special Purpose Committee and departmental reports. The One City, One Book update. I'll defer to the Community Services. Amy Brink.
Thank you, Mayor Anstead. Good evening, council members. I'm here tonight to announce our One City, One Book 2023 author, and I'll wait just a minute while we fire up the PowerPoint presentation that we give to the community each year. We're excited. The committee, I'll start by thanking our One City, One Book committee. If we can go to the next slide, it's head up by Mayor Anstead himself, but I'd like to take a moment to thank our ongoing committee. Nina Hull, Katie Magaha, and actually Rachel Lizette left us last year. She was our children's librarian. The team from the Agoura Hills Library. Judy Carta and Joan Yakovone, both with the Friends of the Agoura Hills Library. Tina Johnson is our LVUSDR Las Virginias Unified School District Coordinator of Libraries, Career Education, and Outreach. Randy Paller, as many of you know, is our Reyes Adobe Days event chair, and Karen Kent is on our Cultural Arts Council member. Thank you for your efforts, and thank you for always supporting the program. Next slide. The City of Agoura Hills, along with the Agoura Hills Library, Friends of the Agoura Hills Library, and Cultural Arts Council, proudly present, are you ready for it? The One City, One Book 2023 selection is Zev's Los Angeles, a political memoir. I don't think that he is unfamiliar to any of our city council, probably very familiar to our city council, but our past LA County Supervisor Zev Yaroslavsky just released a political memoir called From Boyle Heights to the Halls of Power. And we are thrilled that he agreed to be our One City, One Book author. Thank you to Mayor Anstead for your input and your insight. I have a little quote up here from the Los Angeles Times. If Zev's Los Angeles is a story of power and influence and big personalities, and it is also a story of love. Yaroslavsky's love for this city and region define his memoir, but what really animates it is his love for his wife, the sparkling Barbara Yaroslavsky, who is every bit Zev's partner in his life and work, as stated by the Los Angeles Times. Next slide. For most of you who know, Zev Yaroslavsky was a public servant. He just recently retired. He's still with us. He was a public servant for almost 50 years. He began his career by serving on the Los Angeles City Council, and then more familiar to those in the Agoura Hills area, he served on the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors as our representative from District 3. He played a very influential role in limiting construction and development in the city. He is known by his colleagues as driven, ambitious, bright, and a dominant player in municipal initiatives. I think that you also know that he is a Agoura Hills supporter. He has funded many projects and many efforts out here in Agoura Hills. He actually has local family. Our former council member, John Edelston, is his brother-in-law, and he is a huge supporter of the Santa Monica Mountains. So we are happy to announce, next slide, that we will be hosting an evening with Zev Yaroslavsky on Thursday, October 26th at 6 p.m. up at the Agoura Hills Recreation and Event Center. He will be doing a book signing. We're really excited about that. You will need to register. So after this evening, we will be releasing the QR code through Eventbrite that you can sign up. The event is free, but we do ask that you make a reservation to attend. And next slide. To round out our One City, One Book program, we will be hosting a Read with the Mayor, Mayor Anstead. A group of elementary students from Agoura Hills Elementary School will join Mayor Anstead at the Agoura Hills Library for a read with the Mayor this fall. We have not determined which elementary school, nor do we have a date, but we're looking forward to putting Mayor Anstead in the hot seat to read to some young elementary students. And we also give them they get to enjoy a tour of City Hall on those days as well. So we're looking very forward to that. So with that, you can advance to the next slide. I'm available for questions, but again, I present to you your One City, One Book author for 2023. We're really excited about it and think it's very apropos and very fitting for our city at this time. So thank you for letting me present it, and if you have any questions, I'm here.
You got it. Thank you. Any council members have any questions? Awesome. Thank you for that great presentation.
You're welcome.
Really look forward to both events that you talked about with the kids and with the adults with the review of the book.
And I'm sure there'll be some follow-up podcast or communication publicity with it, so we look forward to that.
That sounds great. Awesome. All right. Are there any other reports from staff? All right. Are there any reports from the city council? Nope. Okay. We'll move on to public comments. This section is reserved for persons wishing to speak on items not listed on the agenda that are under the subject matter jurisdiction of the city council. For council chamber attendees, please submit a public comment card to the clerk. For Zoom attendees, please click the raised hand button on the Zoom toolbar now. Public testimony is limited to 3 minutes per speaker, and a speaker's time may not be transferred to another speaker. Persons addressing the council shall not engage in disorderly conduct that disrupts or otherwise impedes the orderly conduct of the meeting. We respectfully request that if you have something to distribute to the council, you hand it to our clerk and do not approach the dais. I will now defer to the clerk for public comments.
Thank you, Mayor Anstead. Yes, written public comments were received by email on or before the 4 p.m. deadline today and forwarded to the City Council prior to the meeting and will be part of the permanent record. Public comments were received from Ray Grulich, representing PRISM. We have received requests to speak in person. Our first speaker is Jim Bukowski.
Thank you.
You can approach the dais.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council members. I am here to report on my completed year of service on the Los Angeles County Civil Grand Jury for 2022-2023. The Civil Grand Jury is completely different from the more familiar Criminal Grand Jury, which is drawn from the same master pool as those selected for criminal and civil trials. California is unique in that its counties have separate criminal and civil grand juries. Every year, dozens of citizens submit detailed applications to serve as volunteers on the Los Angeles County Civil Grand Jury. The same applies to Ventura and all other counties. After background checks and interviews by a judge, the Superior Court holds a lottery drawing to select 23 jurors and 17 alternates, all of whom are sworn in every July 1st. The Civil Grand Jury does not hear cases or issue indictments. Its function is to investigate and report on the operations of the various offices, departments, districts, and government agencies of Los Angeles County. The Civil Grand Jury serves as a watchdog to provide a third-party objective look at the workings of local government of all types. The Civil Grand Jury forms committees, each of which concentrates on certain areas under investigation. These committees visit facilities, interview officials and employees, and develop recommendations. The Civil Grand Jury is required by statute to inspect into the condition and management of all public prisons. The citizens' complaint and detention committees are essential because the grand jury's mandate is to examine complaints from citizens and to inspect all jails. We 23 volunteers knew that serving on the grand jury was a full-time commitment for 1 year. We came from various backgrounds from all parts of Los Angeles County. We devoted 5 days a week traveling to downtown Los Angeles. My commute was made easier because I usually took the commuter express bus number 423, which goes right through our city and dropped me off in downtown Los Angeles each morning at around 7:30 a.m. All jurors met daily to have productive discussions, work on committees, visit sites, conduct interviews, and do research and make decisions by supermajority votes. We got to know each other very well. They became friends. We collaborated to publish our final report, which has 17 completed investigations. The topics we investigated included the foster care system, stormwater capture and recycling, housing for the homeless, election operations, mental health evaluation teams, and career technical education. I was the principal author for 2 topics, the housing vouchers and county fire department, and a co-author for 3 other topics, Metro Rail, career education, and juror compensation. Our final report was delivered to the presiding judge of the Superior Court and to all subjects of our investigations. Agencies to which our findings and recommendations are directed are required to respond within 90 days. Copies of all past and current jury reports are on the county's website, and I have brought a bound copy of the entire report, which is quite extensive. Will I serve again on the grand jury, the civil grand jury? Jurors cannot serve consecutive terms. They must have a year hiatus. Our jury actually had 5 members who had served previously, and their experience was very invaluable. So I might consider doing it again in 1 year. In the meantime, for anyone interested, I do have copies of a fact sheet about the civil grand jury, and I'm happy to answer any questions subject to my requirement to maintain confidentiality about the jury's operations. Thank you.
Jim, I first want to just wholeheartedly thank you for your public service. And, I mean, that's a lot of, a gigantic commitment that you made. And I really want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for your service to our city and to our county to do that. And what's interesting is, and the only thing that I obviously don't want to address any specific comments that you made, but I just want to let you know that right before we sat down tonight, I actually just opened the link for that grand jury. And I saw how long it is, and so it'll take a long time to review, but I'll distinctly make sure that I review the two sections that you mentioned that you authored with the housing and the fire department. So I really, again, truly thank you from the city of Agoura for your service for that. And I don't know if any other council members would like to comment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with the mayor. Thank you for your service. You've always served our community and always made us proud, and this was going way over and beyond what anybody really would expect of a public servant. So thank you for everything, and I look forward to you doing it again. It sounds like you enjoyed it.
Would you like me to pass around? Just
I opened the link as well, and I'll have to come back to it.
It's online.
It's very long. But I really think that what you've done, and you made our city proud, so thank you for participating. Were people on the ground jury, did they know where Agoura Hills was?
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Lopez, Jim, hold on.
Anything else?
I want to echo my colleagues in thanking you for your public service. So Jim served on the Agoura Hills Calabasas Community Center Joint Powers Authority and had to step down for this year because of his commitment. So we had been in touch throughout the year about what he was doing and you know, taking public transportation every day. I love it. And I just want everyone to know that, you know, the moment he finished, he jumped right back on the JPA because, you know, right to the bottom of from head to toe, you're a public servant. And so as Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber said, you know, thank you not only for your service to our county, but to our city, to our little community center, everything. You're the real deal. You're the real deal.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
There are no more in-person public speakers. I'll now defer to staff for any Zoom public speakers. JT?
Yes, Mayor Anstead, there are hands raised to speak on this item. Before we begin live testimony, if you have your hand raised but do not intend to speak on this item, please take a moment now to click on the lower hand tab on your screen. Requests to speak must be received prior to the mayor closing the public comment portion of the item. Speakers will be called in the order they appear on my screen. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker. A 30-second notice will be provided by the clerk, and the microphone will be muted when the 3 minutes have expired. Prior to speaking, please clearly state your first and last name and provide your city of residence for the record. Our first speaker is Ray Grulick.
And
JT, we don't have any audio here, just to let you know.
how about now?
Yes, we
I'm
can.
Ray Groylick. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Ray.
Hi, I'm Ray Groylick. I'm speaking on behalf of PRISM. I submitted a letter a few days ago, and frankly, the purpose of the letter was not to be presented at this meeting, but I was encouraged to do so, so here I am. We were quite gratified. I presented the letter on behalf of my organization, PRISM, and PRISM was very grateful to have the support of our good friends at STAC and the California Native Plant Society. Our concern was, as it has been over the years, to protect the viability of Canaan Road as our evacuation route here in the Santa Monica Mountains. We understand that state mandated housing is a complicated issue, and we have just wanted to remain a gentle reminder, or maybe not so gentle, reminder to the city to please be mindful of maintaining traffic flow through the intersection of Canaan and Agoura Road, and that is pretty much what the letter addresses. It asks a lot of questions, which I don't have time to pose here, and would hope that the council will take a look at that letter and respond to us in writing as we have asked you to do. I will only say that I was taking a look at the trip analysis that the city created after the Woolsey fire, and your own trip analysis pointed out that voluntary evacuations during the Woolsey fire from this part of the Santa Monica Mountains took as long as 80 minutes. My family moved to Malibu Lake in the early 70s, and I have lived through many wildfires up here, and I can tell you they are all very different. The Woolsey fire was kind of an anomaly in terms of how much lead time we had to leave. You don't always have much time. You certainly don't always have 80 minutes. So Canaan Road needs to keep moving in times of disaster, and there are so many sites approved south of the boulevard. In fact, the vast majority of sites for building state mandated housing, as we all know, are south of the boulevard, and our hope is that you can thin out the housing on Canaan Road, because at the moment it would appear that most of it is clustered along Canaan Road, and
Ray, you have 30 seconds.
that could be very dangerous for the people that rely upon Canaan Road for safe evacuation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Anstead. There are no further hands raised to speak on this item.
Thank you very much. Okay, now we'll move on to the consent calendar. This section is reserved for persons wishing to speak on items on the consent calendar. For council chamber attendees, please submit a public comment card to the clerk. For Zoom attendees, please click the raise hand button on the Zoom toolbar now. Public testimony is limited to 3 minutes per speaker, and a speaker's time may not be transferred to another speaker. We respectfully request that if you have something to distribute to the council, you hand it to our clerk and do not approach the dais. I will now defer to the clerk.
Thank you, Mayor Anstead. Yes, written public comments were received by email on or before the 4 p.m. deadline today and forwarded to the City Council prior to the meeting and will be part of the permanent record. Public comments were received by the following: Courtney Welsh and Dylan Casey, Oakland, representing Cal HDF. There are no in-person public speakers. I will now defer to staff for any Zoom public speakers.
Thank you, Mayor Anstead. No hands are raised to speak on this item.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the City Council on the consent calendar? And I believe I'll defer to Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber for a comment on item number 1.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to request a correction to the minutes for item number 1 on the consent calendar. At the June 28th regular City Council meeting under Intergovernmental Special Purpose Committee and Departmental Reports, I reported out on the action that was taken at the Environmental Policy Committee meeting for Cal Cities regarding AB 460 and AB 1337. To clarify the vote that occurred, I would like to make a correction to the minutes on item number 1, page 2, and strike out the third paragraph in its entirety and replace with the following paragraph, which I will read as follows. Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber reported that she attended the first in-person meeting of the Environmental Policy Committee for Cal Cities in June, and the committee was asked by Cal Cities to take a position on AB 460 and AB 1337. As the vice chair of the committee, and as both of these bills would take away local control and give control to the State Water Resources Board, she reached out to and received guidance from city staff regarding her ability to vote pursuant to the city's legislative platform. Although the Environmental Policy Committee for Cal Cities approved supporting AB 460, she voted against it. With regards to AB 1337, Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber joined the committee in taking a neutral position on AB 1337. Thank you for your consideration with this correction to item number 1, and I would respectfully request the City Council approve the consent calendar as amended.
Are there any questions or statements on the amendment, proposed amendment? Okay. I will now call for a motion and a second to adopt the consent calendar with item number 1 as amended by Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber. Do I have a motion and a second?
Councilmember Sylvester so moves.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second. Deborah Klein Lopez.
Thank you. I'll now defer to the clerk for a roll call vote.
Councilmember Lopez.
Aye.
Councilmember Sylvester.
Aye.
Councilmember Wolf.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber.
Aye.
Mayor Anstead.
Aye.
Mayor Anstead, you have approval 5-0.
Thank you very much. Our next item for discussion and action is a discussion to consider and provide feedback on the aesthetic character of the Agoura Hills Linear Park and Greenway project, approved use agreement number 23-36 with the Los Angeles County Flood Control District, and receive a project status update. I will now defer to staff for that update.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, honorable council members. Tonight, we have the pleasure of presenting to you an update on the city's linear park, which we're now terming the city's Greenway project. A greenway is, could we back up just one slide? A greenway is generally a linear open space or recreational corridor designed for non-motorized transportation, such as walking, cycling, jogging, or in our case, equestrian use. Greenways like ours are designed to promote active transportation, improve access to recreational areas like the Santa Monica Mountains, and contribute to environmental sustainability. For that reason, we felt the terminology of a greenway was more appropriate for the project. Presenting with me tonight are Charmaine Yambao, the project's manager and our senior civil engineer, as well as Rachel, we also have the team from M6 here to help us answer questions at the end of our presentation. We have Rachel Williams, who's been the designer on the project, as well as the owners of the firm M6, Bob Woodward and Mahmood, excuse me. And with us also we have Amy Brink, our community services director, in case there are any questions related to context of our existing parks. Next slide, please. Our presentation includes a brief description of the project's location and boundaries, progress, and a general update, a recommendation to enter into a use agreement with LA County Flood Control District, and the project's layout and features. We will also present 2 alternative styles for the park and examine the need for features like an arbor or additional lighting. When we conclude, we will seek input from the City Council on each of these aesthetic items. The feedback we hear tonight will inform the project design, and staff will return with any alternatives or additive items at a future City Council meeting, very likely when we make our recommendation to enter into a construction management contract later this summer. Next slide, please. The project is located along Agoura Road, from Cornell Road to Wizen Market Square driveway on Agoura Road to the east. The majority of the land is owned by the Los Angeles County Flood Control District. However, the project makes connections to the Wizen Market Square and Las Virgenes Municipal Water District building, and it has improvements within the public right-of-way. Additionally, we'll be undergrounding approximately 700 feet of overhead utility lines and communication lines along Cornell, and an additional 800 feet of utility lines along Agoura Road. With that, Charmaine Yambao will further describe the project. Next slide, please.
Thank you, Jessica. The project has been in development and design for almost 5 years. The project progress is shown on the next slide. As you would expect with a project with this much history, copious amount of work went into the development of the project. I will quickly highlight the progress milestones. Starting in 2019 is the birth of the project concept, which also started the city's 5 community outreach workshops and the start of the preliminary design of the project. In 2020, the last of the public workshops was held, applications for funding continued earnestly, and application was submitted to LA County for conceptual approval of the project. In 2021, the project environmental document was approved, At the same time, LA County also gave conceptual approval of the project, which started the city's final design. And while doing that, we continued to seek funding for construction of the project. In 2022, the Public Works Subcommittee provided feedback and approvals on the 50% and 90% design plans. The project received support from the Community Services Coalition for the Art in Public Places funding, and thanks to the support of former State Assembly member Richard Bloom, the project received $6 million in state-specified grant for construction. With the start of 2023, the project secured the remaining funds needed for construction in the appropriation of Measure R and M funds by Metro, which was made possible through the generous support of former Los Angeles County Supervisor Sheila Kuehl, current Los Angeles County Supervisor Lindsay Horvat, and our Las Virgenes Malibu Council of Governments. And as recently as last month, culminating 2 years of review and negotiations with the county, a final construction permit was issued for the project. Next slide, please. Now, with the project fully funded and permits issued, the project is ready to start its final march to construction. Funding agreements for the construction phase of the project are currently under development. The state funding MOU has been executed and is waiting for the final application outlining the use of funds, including the county's use agreement, which I will discuss later in the presentation. The funding agreement with Metro is currently in the process of review. All requested documents for the FA have been submitted, and when approved, the city manager has the authority to execute upon receipt. Once the funding agreements are fully executed, requests for proposal for construction management services and a call for project for the Art in Public Places with the theme of native and natural will be advertised. The construction management consultant will assist the city in reviewing the constructability of the final design and preparing the final bid package. Staff anticipates the project will be ready to advertise for bids this fall with award of construction contract by the end of the winter quarter. A groundbreaking ceremony for the project is expected to be scheduled for early 2024. And weather permitting, construction is estimated to take 24 months with a 3-month plant establishment period. So exciting. As mentioned earlier in the presentation, the majority of the project is on LA County Flood Control District land, which requires a use agreement between the city and the county. Next slide, please. The project is proposed to be built over the flood control channel, which will be capped with a concrete slab deck atop foundation structural piles, transforming the existing concrete channel into a natural and native recreation area. The use agreement will indemnify the county while placing the responsibility of the greenway, which includes the concrete cap, to the city. On May 31st, the county issued the final construction permit for the project, with a condition that no construction to start without execution of this use agreement. Over the past year, staff has been negotiating with the county on a final agreement for the use of the county property for the Greenway project. The county has a template for this use agreement. The standard language includes indemnification of the county and flood control district and the right for the county to terminate the agreement and removal of all improvements. This language is standard and exists in many of the use agreements the city has already entered with the county on other facilities that exist on county land. Any significant changes to the template usually requires board action, which, as you know, could take years. But because the likelihood of termination is low, the city was able to negotiate language without board action, and the language that we were able to negotiate provides for city participation of early review of the county proposed project site selection that may impact the Greenway, safeguards for construction financing options, and a longer initial term with 2 10-year extensions, giving us a total of 45 years before a new use agreement would need to be executed. Staff reviewed the draft language of the use agreement with the Public Works Subcommittee. On May 23rd, the Public Works Subcommittee recommended the approval of the use agreement. The action tonight is for the City Council to approve the use agreement with the Los Angeles County Flood Control District, authorize the mayor to execute the agreement on behalf of the City Council. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm going to shake out. Now is the fun part of the presentation. The next few slides will highlight the project layout and features, illuminating the multi-benefits the project hopes to provide to our community. This slide shows it provides increased multimodal connectivity. The pathway highlighted in red is the equestrian pathway, and the one highlighted in blue, or maybe it's purplish blue, is the pedestrian bicycle path. Both pathways provide connectivity to existing paths in the public, improved AVSP area just west of the project, and to the Wizen Market Square, which is adjacent north of the project. Next slide, please. These next few slides will show the layout of the Greenway. This slide here shows Butterfly Gardens, the one that's shown throughout the stretch of the Greenway. It continues with the city's efforts that we've provided in parks like Morrison. Next slide, please. This slide shows our bioswales and modular wetlands in the number 2. These improve watershed health, promote water reuse and sustainability. These features also satisfy our grant requirements for design of this project. Next slide, please. These areas on the slide marked with 3 are the seating and gathering areas. These encourage visitors to sit and take in the natural surroundings or gather with their friends and family for a picnic or wait to be seated at a nearby restaurant. Next slide, please. This area marked 4, it's on the very east end of the project, is an interactive area which will provide tactile and sensory play in a natural setting place for both children and adults. Next slide, please. Continuing the city's goal of implementing bike-friendly facilities, shown here on this slide on either end of the Greenway are bike racks and repair stations, encouraging cycling as a form of transportation to the park. Next slide, please. And this slide shows 6 dedicated areas that can be used for art and education opportunities. In addition to the art in public places, staff is working with Agoura High School and their civic leadership program in developing an educational component to the project. Initial ideas include a QR code map on the medicinal and historical significance of the hyper-local plants to the indigenous people and/or the inclusion of the park's public art with the city's already established Art in Public Spaces program. Next slide, please. Other elements and features worth highlighting of this project, 85 to 90% of the planting material will be native. We also want to point out that over 1,100 cubic feet of water will be treated by the bioswales that flank the Greenway and the modular wetland, which will treat off-site flooding that we typically have experienced at the Agoura-Cornell intersection. There are also pedestrian bridges over the bioswales, providing connectivity for the pedestrians and access to points of interest. And there are tree wells that have been incorporated to provide shade for the seating and gathering areas. Next slide, please. And last, but certainly not least, is the plant palette of the Greenway. This slide is meant to show how colorful the Greenway will be with hyper-local plant palette. With the wildlife corridor just a mile south of the project, Robert Rock with Living Habitats and the main consultant on the wildlife planting design for the wildlife corridor has graciously offered to assist the city on achieving a National Wildlife Federation habitat certification for the project. Rock has reviewed the project and assessed that the project embraces the 5 elements needed for certification. And that, I guess I should have sounded more excited. It's like certification. In line with the wildlife corridor. So with that, I'd like to hand over to Jessica to present the overall aesthetic options for the project.
Pretty cool, huh? We'll keep going. Next, we're going to present on several aesthetic items. We're hoping to see consensus on the overall style for the park and receive feedback on the need for arbors or additional lighting. Again, the City Council will have further opportunities to provide direction and feedback on aesthetic items prior to entering into a construction contract for the project this winter. Next slide, please. The recommendations we're making this evening are based on the direction from the Public Works Subcommittee, comprised of Mayor Anstead and Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber, on May 23rd of 2023. Ultimately, the Public Works Subcommittee was looking for 1, a slightly more modern look, 2, something cohesive with the elements of the AVSP, and 3, to make sure that we maintain that native and inviting feel that we all enjoy here in Agoura Hills. And with that, I'll jump right into it. Next slide, please. As we go through these next handful of slides, you'll see both the subcommittee's feedback on either left, top, or bottom, I'll explain as we go, and staff's recommendation for a commercially available amenity. The subcommittee liked the benches from the Recreation and Event Center, shown on the top left, and asked staff to find something similar, but with a back, like shown on the right. They also liked the refuse bins located along Agoura Road in the AVSP area, but wanted something with a less ornate top. Staff identified the refuse bins to the right as similar to complement the bench. Before we move on to the next one, I'd like to mention that the final bins will ensure that there's a crow deterrent of some sort and that appropriate bins are provided for trash, recycling, and green waste. Next slide, please. The subcommittee liked the bike racks at the Recreation and Event Center as well, and the picnic table at City Hall. We're recommending the bike racks and picnic tables shown here on the right, again to match and due to their low maintenance needs. Next slide, please. The subcommittee liked the smoother flagstone used at the Adobe, shown on the top left, but wanted the color scheme to tie into the nearby Agoura Road improvements, shown on the bottom left. Staff identified the limestone flagstone shown to the right to kind of achieve that aesthetic. Next slide, please. 2 veneer options were identified by the subcommittee for the Greenway. The stone at the Civic Center, shown on the top left, and the stone at the Recreation and Event Center, shown on the top right. You'll see 2 alternative seat wall veneer options below. With all of that feedback, staff presents 2 alternatives for the overarching design of the park and seeks council's consensus on the preferred alternative style or direction if we aren't hitting that mark. So with that, can we go to the next slide? This pulls together all of the recommended amenities over the past several slides. You'll see the bioswales with a white and gray palette for the stone, as well as all of our native plant material. The bike racks, trash bins, picnic table, bench, flagstone, and in this iteration is the stone from the Event and Rec Center. We consider this more of a modern alternative, and in the next alternative, if we can advance the slide, we have a little bit more of a rustic modern here. So the wood is darker with more bronze metal tones, a simpler bike rack, and again, that gray and sand palette for the stone veneer, flagstone, and the gray stone in the bioswales. You'll see on the top left, the picnic table can be stained in a darker tone to match the other elements in this alternative. So with that, could we advance the slide? We can come back to those 2 alternatives too when we go to talk about, or to receive feedback, excuse me. Great. Another item staff is hoping to confirm is the City Council's opinion on the need for an arbor at one or both of our Greenway entrances. On this slide, you'll see 2 renderings. They were prepared by our landscape architect. On the left includes a proposed arbor, and on the right is the existing arbor that's attached to the Agoura Wine and Beer Company at the Wizen Market Square. While the arbor proposed provides a point of visual interest and entrance to the park, staff has some concerns that it may conflict with the existing arbor and seeks input from the council. Next slide, please. The Public Works Subcommittee reviewed the Greenway's lighting needs together and directed staff to bring the item to the full council for input prior to providing a full recommendation. On this slide, you'll see staff's minimum recommendation, which includes the AVSP specified pedestrian lights at both project entrances. We may recommend a slight modification to include one head rather than two at the entrances to the park, as well as low-lit pathway lighting along the bike and pedestrian trail. These smaller lights on the left can be found along the eastbound Agoura Road in Westlake Village, north of Lindero Canyon Road, should the council or any residents be interested in viewing them in the evening. Next slide, please. The subcommittee discussed some considerations that could necessitate more lighting than the minimum recommendation just discussed, including the proximity to businesses that operate in the evening, like the Canyon Club, restaurants, art studios, and even the possibility for the city to host evening events in this location. Ultimately, we strive to balance increased safety through the use of lighting with our intent to keep our dark skies. Lighting has so many different options that staff is not making a recommendation at this time. We're simply seeking the council's advice on the level of lighting necessitated by a project of this type, so near a business center and located in the heart of the Agoura Village specific plan area, excuse me. Staff will, oh, I'm sorry, could we back up one slide? Thank you. Staff will take the feedback on the lighting we heard tonight and return with a recommendation that matches the council's desire for the overall style that we hear, and we'll bring it back to a later meeting. The site's been designed to be wired for any level of lighting that the City Council deems appropriate. And on this slide, you'll see there's options for area lighting like pedestrian lights, smart city lighting that could be motion detectors and still on timers, so may only do motion detection during a certain period and shut off so that wildlife isn't turning them on in the middle of the night. Wall and surface mount lighting could be attached to the seat walls. Bollards could be included, and obviously we recommend the path lighting on the previous page or larger. So depending on the council's interests, those are all options that we can talk about later on in the presentation. And they're listed on this slide if we want to return to that. Next slide, please. I'd also like the Public Works Subcommittee, I'd also like to share the Public Works Subcommittee's recommendation to name the project the Ladyface Greenway Park, or I'm sorry, the Ladyface Greenway, excuse me, and present renderings for two entrances. Here you can see the project from Agoura Road at the driveway to Wizen Market Square, looking northwest. And on the next slide, you can see the project from Cornell Road and Agoura Road looking northeast. Should the council agree that these renderings meet the project's desired aesthetic, we may use them for promotional materials and on social media. If the council further decides the name of the project tonight, we will include it in these renderings. Next slide, please. Again, I'll mention we have Charmaine Yambao, Amy Brink, Rachel Williams, and the rest of the team at M6, our design consultant for the project, here tonight to help answer any questions and receive your feedback. Next slide, please. For the convenience of the council, we have identified the action item to approve the use agreement, as well as feedback items requested this evening on our final slide. And we can toggle back to any images you wish. Thank you for your time, and I think all of us sincerely appreciate the opportunity to work on such an amazing project. This concludes our presentation.
Thank you. So if I'm not mistaken, if you go back, it looks like you want feedback on 4 items besides approving the use agreement. You wanted the overall style, for us to choose that, the art, whether to include the arbor, the lighting would be number 3, I believe. And what was, was there one other one that I missed?
Consideration of the name Ladyface Greenway.
Yes, okay. That's good, thank you. Before we move to public comment, do any council members have questions on the staff presentation? Councilmember Lopez. I'll start with you.
Thank you. I think I had more fun looking at Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber during this presentation than even that, because she's beaming over there. I have just a few questions. So just so I understand the use agreement, the base use agreement is 25 years with an extension to extend twice at 10 years for 40, so for 45 total, is that right?
That is correct.
Okay, and so do we have any use agreements like that right now with the county or with another agency?
All of our use agreements with the county include that language. We've
Okay.
recently approved similar use agreements for the diversion structures, for example. I think that there was an intent on the part of the staff, because of the magnitude of this project, to make sure that that was highlighted. There were, some concerns on the part of our city attorney, but given the low risk of them actually implementing a project at this site, it's really only 700 feet of their channel, and there is an open access on the other side. We did recommend, approving that use agreement to the Public Works Subcommittee, and I wouldn't presume to speak for them, but maybe they would like to elaborate on that as well.
Okay, so it's not typical to ask for a longer term, because obviously nobody wants to invest millions of dollars and then have the county, say, now we want it back.
We tried to negotiate the longest term we can. 25 is their standard. We couldn't get them to push past 45. I have one of the best negotiators on my staff I've ever seen, and she really brought it as far as she could.
Okay. Okay. One question on the refuse bins. They look pretty open, the more modern version, and you had said that there would be some kind of protection for crows or something like that. I mean, there's a lot of animals that live in that area. So, and I'm thinking I've got poison-free Agoura on my shoulder here, making sure that we, keep food items and this and that out, that we don't encourage, our animals to come and go scrounging through. So is that incorporated in the research there?
So it will be incorporated into the final selection. Ultimately, what we saw tonight is really a selection of available materials that establish a look for the park. The final element could change between now and then. If it changes from that, we'll bring that back to you. But we believe that there's an inset that kind of is deters animals from getting in.
Okay. Next question is, so it's you're estimating a 24-month construction time. That includes the undergrounding of all of the utilities?
It does. It includes all of the undergrounding as well as a 3-month plant establishment period.
Okay. Okay. And then I guess my last question is, are there, I would love to see this expanded all the way down Agoura Road, right? I mean, that goal is to take this and, hopefully be able to replicate it there and other places. Are we putting things in place that would make it easy to expand down the road should we get the funding? Or is this just like this little square and then we'd have to start all over if we did get funding for further? I guess the question is really like, how far are we, what foundations are being put in place, so that we don't have to recreate the wheel if we get the opportunity to expand?
So that's a really great question. I think the design of this project is very local to that project footprint, right? If we, let me back up just a step. One of the goals for this fiscal year is for my department to take a look at all of our citywide creeks and return with a plan. So that's one step towards understanding what we could do further east of this project location. As well as a lot of the elements that were designed in, we couldn't just recan, but we do know what LA County is willing to approve as far as design elements for caps. We have those relationships. It would be slightly more streamlined, but any further development similar to this would still need to go through environmental review, design, permitting, similar to this project.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you. I have excuse me. I have a few questions. If we could actually, one of the questions is where is, do we think that the parking or where people are going to be coming from will be, just so I can inform my thoughts on the signage?
So I believe we looked at that during our CEQA review of the project, right? We anticipate that the folks that use this park, or I'm sorry, the Screenway, I'm still so used to calling it a park, I apologize, will be coming from like future residents of the AVSP area, that will hopefully bike or walk. We anticipate folks that are using the Wizen Center will come and, go get a coffee and then walk through our project site. And it's less than 500 feet away from one of our only bus stops. So we're hoping folks would take, the bus maybe from even out of town if they're, say a commuter with a bike. They can take their bus, jump on their bike, fix up their bike at our bike stations, and then ride to work. But the project does not have dedicated parking at the park site.
Okay, and so if folks are coming from out of town or if somebody does drive, is there going to be any improvements to the crossing, like any of the crosswalks?
Another great question. There are going to be improvements to the crosswalks at Cornell and Agoura, and there are improvements to the equestrian crossing across Cornell from the equestrian trail to the west to the site. And it's not in our plans yet, but we are currently assessing the need for a possible crosswalk or improvement at the Wizen Center driveway, but that's something that I think needs more attention before we can recommend it to the council.
Okay, thank you. Another question going off is a question, I'm going to phrase this like a question regarding the trash situation. Was there ever any thought of looking at some nature-based solutions like raptor poles at the project?
That hasn't been, but we can take that as an item of feedback if during your deliberation the council has the will to include something like that in the project.
Thank you. And then regarding like the butterfly gardens, is there any special upkeep that, so a butterfly garden means like a native garden or pollinator garden. Will this require any special contracts, or does it need to be handled differently than our other landscaping in the city?
So upon final construction completion of the project and the 90-day plant establishment period concluding, we anticipate that this would be an increase to our existing landscape contract with whoever our contractor is at that point. It's currently Brightview. I don't anticipate the butterfly gardens will have any significant increase in maintenance. They really are pretty easy to maintain plants. If anything, they grow rather large, these types. So.
Okay, that's very helpful. Another question is regarding planned signage, and will there be any informational signage within the park giving a history of the project and a thank you to the state of California, or a thank you to how the funding was, how we arrived there?
So that is something we generally include on our large capital improvement projects, and I anticipate we'll have a sign thanking everyone who's helped fund the project and entered into agreements with us. As far as educational signage, that'll be throughout the project. I hope that answers your
question. Yeah, that absolutely does. And then my last question is that we will be capping part of the creek. Is that correct? And so I think this is the first project like this I know of in the region, which is very exciting and it's an interesting use. But we feel confident that all studies for a 1,000-year flood event can support the capping.
Yeah, actually, all of that was reviewed as part of the permit with LA County Flood Control regarding flooding. We've also received our permits from Fish and Game, from the Water Resources Control Board. So yes, we're very confident. The project includes an additional 18 inches of freeboard. I'm sorry, let me hand that over to Rachel, our designer.
Yeah. So as part of the modeled hydraulic analysis of the channel itself, there are some improvements that are occurring to the existing channel walls. So they're raised a maximum of 6 inches. And then as part of the LA County's permit requirements, we have to maintain a 1-foot freeboard. So at a maximum, yeah, we're looking at about 16 to 18 inches of different elevation than what you're seeing there. And that's just the bottom of the park. And then on top of the park, you'll see the landscaping that will additionally provide an increased elevation than what's currently out there. So yes, we are definitely very confident, and all of the flood will be contained within the existing channel with our proposed park and the modeled analysis.
That's very interesting. Thank you. And then my last question, which is a question: do we expect there to be any noticeable water quality improvement, and will there be any testing for that to demonstrate the improved water quality before the park and after the park? And I don't know if that's within the scope of what we're even discussing tonight, so I apologize if it's not.
No, I mean, we're here to answer any questions that you have about the park. I think we're pretty confident we can answer them. What Charmaine mentioned earlier, we have 1,100 cubic feet of water that's going to be treated at the park. There isn't anticipated to be specific water quality testing around that. These are proven BMP, best management practices, these bioswales. I think we're going to see a significant increase in water quality just by clearing out the sediment from that flood water that we see at the Cornell and Agoura Road intersection prior to it entering the creek. And so I think that there will be measurable improvements that aren't being measured other than at our regulatory monitoring sites further down the creek. So I think we should see improvements to sediment, but it'll be a cumulative testing area. If there's a desire on the part of the council to do additional testing, we could, but that can get expensive, and we haven't included testing ports in the cap, so we might have to go back for a redesign. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. I think that I can confidently say it will improve water quality.
That the last sentence you said was what I was looking for. So thank you so much. That concludes my questions.
Councilmember Sylvester.
Thank you.
You got it.
Some great questions there, Councilmember Wolf. Thank you, because I had some of those. I just want to follow up. I know this year, and I can't remember where it was in LA County, but there was a condominium development that had covered over their waterway, and it had all collapsed because of the water pooling on top. I know you've taken into account the water flowing underneath, but so if we get suddenly a massive downpour, will that all drain sufficiently so that it doesn't make it too heavy on top?
Again, that's a really great question. I'll give my half answer and then I'll ask Rachel to elaborate on that. But all of the rain that falls on the site should travel to a bioswale where any sediment trash will be removed from that water, and then it goes into a drain that goes into the channel. Can you elaborate on that a little bit, Rachel?
Yeah, that's exactly correct. So the overbuild of that existing channel is actually at a slight tilt, so it is going to drain to the south on all of those existing or those proposed bioswales, and then that will be treated, and then any overflow from the bioswales will return back into that existing LA County flood control channel.
But so it won't ever build up?
Nope, it'll all be draining towards essentially back to where it's supposed to be in the existing channel.
Thank you. And I have a question about lights. What sort of hours are you thinking that lights will be on there?
So that's one of the things we'd really like to see the city council deliberate. I think that, and just provide recommendations to us. We can take your thoughts and concerns and consider them and bring a recommendation back through the subcommittee and then back to yourselves. Getting a little reverb, I apologize. But I imagine we'd want to ask the council to consider linking it somehow to maybe a short amount of time after we expect concerts to end on a regular basis, after we have people who may have gone and had a cocktail or two at a local restaurant to have gone home. That way, if they get out and they go walking through the park, there may be light there, if that's the will of the city council.
Right. And in Wisden Center, the nights stay on all night in the parking lot, is that correct?
I do believe that's correct. I'm not sure that that dictates what we have to do at the
I'm
park, but I do believe you're correct, and I can return with a response to you.
Okay. And then following up on the equestrian, is there going to be a hitching post?
There will be a hitching post and a water fountain that includes kind of a spigot for water bottle filling. I had several meetings during COVID with folks over Zoom to understand the equestrian desires. And I was like, do you need these horse drinking stations? They were like, no, we just need to be able to fill up a water bottle.
Yeah.
We'll all bring our own bowl. So there'll be...
so people will be able to ride their horses, hitch them, and go and have a dinner or whatever.
We're hoping that we'll actually have Rachel ride her horse.
And then one other question I have, and I hate to raise this, but skateboard deterrence. Because I know sometimes you'll get teenagers and they'll be whizzing through there on the walls and if the benches are open, they'll use them. So is there something being taken into consideration for that?
So not at the moment, but we can absolutely take that feedback. It's something that could easily be incorporated into the site, and there's any level of decorative or very simple skateboard stops that we could include. Also, we can consider how, like on the seat walls, how the flagstone or cap is utilized to make it inconvenient to skateboard if we want to get away from one aesthetic or the other. We can consider that and bring that through subcommittee well before that's specified.
Okay, great. Yeah, I think that was, yes, and then just to follow up what Councilmember Klein-Lopez said about the 45 years, after that there is no control over what happens, or do we then get to renegotiate? Do we know?
It's very likely we'll just be able to renegotiate. It's very likely it would be under the same terms. That seems to be what we've seen happen with LA County agreements in the past. Yeah, I think.
Okay. And then trees that are going to be planted, those are going to be not on the actual, over the waterway, they'll be on the edges, right?
So there actually will be some trees planted in planters so it's scattered around the greenway.
So they'll have the depth for their...
Exactly. There'll be depth that'll be raised, and actually around them, we're looking at having seating, so it should be a nice element.
And then I just wanted to follow up, the children's interactive area, that is not a playground, to clarify, correct?
So we're still kind of toying with that element, if it's appropriate to have a playground so close to the restaurants, if we want to have something really simple that kids can play on, if possibly a playground is appropriate, or if like a tactile, maybe something that's more appropriate for our residents who have ADA concerns that they can walk right up to and play with. So we're still working through that with the Public Works Subcommittee to specify what goes there.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all my questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Weber? No questions? Okay. Well, and I don't have any questions either, and based on the subcommittee. So for public comments, written public comments were requested to be emailed in advance of tonight's meeting. If you wish to speak, please click the raise hand button on the Zoom toolbar now. Public testimony is limited to 3 minutes per speaker, and a speaker's time may not be transferred to another speaker. We respectfully request that if you have something to distribute to the council, you hand it to our clerk and do not approach the dais. I will now defer to the clerk for public comments.
Thank you, Mayor Anstead. No written public comments have been received and no speaker cards have been submitted. I will now defer to staff for any remote participants.
Thank you, Mayor Anstead. No hands are raised to speak on this item.
Thank you very much. Do any council members have any further questions before we move into deliberations? Okay, and on deliberations, as I call the city council members, I think the four things, well, actually there's five if we include the main vote on approving the agreement number 23-36. But we also, the four choices on the aesthetics really are overall style, arbor or not, the lighting, and then the name. So those are the four things. If you could address those in our discussion, I would appreciate that. And then also on your comment on whether you agree with the agreement number 23-36. So with that, how about I'll start on my far left.
Excuse me, Mr.
Oh,
Mayor, if
sorry.
I could start, because I can
Sure.
answer some
Oh,
of the
sure.
questions, I think, since I've been working on it for
You got it.
5 years.
You got Mayor
Is there
Pro Tem.
anybody here that was there 5 years besides Romero and
I'll
Nate?
start on the
But-
right then.
So
All right.
just so you know, with the use agreement, it was kind of a take it or leave it. So just kind of keep that in mind. We could not do the project if that was a concern that you think the county's going to come back in and want us to remove it, because it is a lot of money and it's not comfortable. With regards to a rodent poll, Councilmember Wolf, I just want you to know that I have talked to Poison Free Agoura about it. It's not a great place for a rodent poll because first of all, you can only put a rodent poll where you actually know that nobody's using any poisons. And with all the private property, restaurants, and all of that will be surrounding the area, it's probably not a great place for one, but that doesn't mean there can't be one somewhere else in the area that perhaps has less trash cans, not so close to the Wizen marketplace. It also, you know, the waste from the raptors, you know, is then all over the Greenbelt. So it's just something to think about. It's a good idea, and maybe we can at some point get some funding to put one somewhere else in the village that maybe is less of a problem. The parking, I think that we all kind of expect that the same people who would be coming to the Wizen Marketplace for dinner or to Agoura Village to either live or, you know, it's kind of an informal Greenbelt. And so it's not like it's going to be so much of a destination. The Wizen Marketplace, Agoura Village, the Ladyface, Tavern, Tomoko, those restaurants, they're more like the destination, and you'd be able to still park at those locations and then walk along the Greenbelt. So, you know, but we expect that there'll be a lot of bike riding and a lot of pedestrians coming through. The signage, you know, one of our ideas all along has been to kind of make it not so different that it doesn't look like Agoura Hills. So that's why we looked at some of the elements that are used at the event center or City Hall, because we get nothing but compliments for 20-something years at here. And I would call this myself, and I'm not a designer, but kind of a rustic modern, so that it's kind of kept its, you know, it looks great. I mean, you still use the woods, you use the lighting, the beam, you know, all those kinds of things are somewhat modern, but they have a rustic feel to them. So that's why we were looking at those, you know, those different things. And the next generation, what we all know is, you know, white and stainless, white and stainless, white and stainless. So, and that's actually 2 generations now of keeping it, you know, clean and crisp, and so that's where we're coming from in that. We also hope that we would be able to, you know, we've got some ideas about incorporating some of indigenous history, even in the signage, perhaps using indigenous language in addition to English, some things like that, that there's grants out there that we can maybe expand on that. And we want this Greenbelt to flow with the rest of the city again. So, you know, you've got your event center, you've got City Hall, you've got Reyes Adobe. So that's kind of where we were coming from instead of starting all over from ground zero. And normally our parks in the city are open from dusk to dawn, but the reason we wanted to bring this back to you is because we feel that that's probably not going to work here, because we expect that people will be not leaving, they'll be walking through it after dusk. And so, you know, we don't want it to be too lit up, but we do want safety is a big, you know, consideration also. So we don't want it to be so lit up that it's blinding or that it keeps wildlife away. So that's why, you know, there's so many different ways to do it, and we just really wanted your input on that as well. And I think that's all the, oh, and the kid play area, you know, I just want to make it clear that it's never been part of the project to be a play area in terms of a slide, swings, none of that. But we're hoping that it'll be something like perhaps they can climb on some rocks, or they can, you know, do things like that. So it'll be something for kids, but I wouldn't want to mislead you that it's, because that would make it much more of a destination. It's just not going to really be like that. It would be much more of something natural that kids can, you know, climb on, most likely. So that's what we're looking at. But with that, I don't have any other items to talk to you about. But it's a very exciting project, and I think that, you know, as you know, the state and the county and everybody's supportive, and so we want you to, the committee, we felt that we wanted you to be part of the next step in deciding some of these aesthetic things, which always end up being so much more important than the engineering and the water. I mean, that's all being taken care of, but we do, you know, we want you guys to be part of it, so.
Thank you for those comments, Mayor Pro Tem. I actually have to ask you, because there's a little nuance that we have in these choices, because I don't think during our subcommittee meeting, some of this wasn't specifically called out. And like on the picture with the more modern versus the rustic. So what your comments concerning the modern rustic, I got to get you to kind of choose which one would you say, because if we're all going to try to come to consensus, which one would you go
For
with?
me, you know, and I didn't mean to go first on everything, but I would say where we have the metal and the wood and the stone, because I think the metal gives it a more modern look. Otherwise, it becomes, and some people might like this, but it's very dark. And it blends well, but there's nothing about it that really, I just think with the native plants and the more modern, but not so modern that it would be completely metal, that it would be like wood and stones and all of that. As far as the arbor goes, as long as there's shade, I don't necessarily think we need an arbor. But we do need shade, and we will have that with the trees and the tree wells, but I think that's going to be a very important feature. And so then I look to all of you, you know, or even, you know, Amy, about, you know, future things that we might do. Would we need an arbor? There is the one that's already there that's on private property, and so it would seem to me that we would want that to flow together and look consistent, even though that's private property. As far as the name Ladyface, we just felt that, you know, what else can you say? Ladyface Mountain rules the day here in Agoura Hills. But we're open to hearing other names. With the lighting, you know, I do want it to be safe, but I do not want it to be lit up. You know, we've gotten a lot of flack, not recently, but when we put up the poles on Agoura Road for how light it was. I've always thought that when and if Agoura Village gets built, that lighting probably won't be as much of an issue, but it doesn't help to tell residents, you know, I mean, I remember residents saying, well, why do you have to do this now? Why can't the lights be turned off? And so we came a long way. We got the frosted globes. We made sure that we changed the kelvins to 2700, which is on the very low scale. And we talked about just having, instead of having the exact same light pole that has the two lights, that maybe we would just have one light, but a similar image, you know, so that it's not double the light. We definitely need walk path light. And so, you know, I think that, you know, we would come back with even more suggestions once we look at it. I think what's for you all to decide is, you know, how dark do you want it to be, or how lit up do you want it to be? Do you want the green belt to be basically closed at dusk, or do you want to try and have some lighting, more lighting, so that people can walk through it after the Canyon Club, or after, you know, the Canyon Club is usually over by 10:30 or 11, so we're not talking 2 o'clock in the morning, and none of those restaurants are open. I don't know what may come in the future, but, you know, I can't remember the last time there was a restaurant or bar in Agoura Hills that, actually, I got one. But they had a special lingerie show going, so they brought in a whole different, whole different group of people, or, you know, not a different group, just they were out late. But other than that, most of the places close, you know, between 11 and 12, and so we think that, you know, keeping it lit longer is probably a good idea for safety factors. But, you know, that's all for you to all decide. And then, you know, I would support either aesthetic, but I just think that for it to live, you know, for 50 years, it probably would, that rustic modern really holds up nicely, of what I call, versus just rustic, that becomes a little more like, you know, Knott's Berry Farm is rustic. You know, I mean, they take, it's great. You go there and you feel like you've gone back into the wild, wild west, and it's very rustic and lovely, and, you know, no complaints. I love going there. But this would be more modern than that, you know, in terms of, and I think the big deal is using the, you know, sharper lines and using the metal or the aluminum rather than just wood. So with that, you know, those are, you know, I would, you know, I do have to tell you that Ms. Forte definitely knows my opinions on this project, and has you know, has worked for a long time with me on it. So I think, you know, we just want to hear what you guys all have to say. But so I don't think she needs to hear any more from me. Thank you.
Awesome. You got it. Councilmember Sylvester.
Thank you for filling us in.
Yeah.
So first of all, yes, I can approve the agreement.
Okay.
I mean, I think the Greenway is something really exciting, and I'm looking forward to see it finally come to fruition. Could I look at the two slides? Because this is the first time this evening that I've seen them. Can they be shown again, the two styles? So,
Erica, if you move to slides 25 and 26, maybe just land us on slide 25.
okay, all right, we'll go back to that in a second. The lighting, I agree with my fellow council member. I think it should, because it's a greenway, and it's a walking area, so when you're coming out of the Canyon Club, if you want to just go and sit and relax for a moment, think about your concert, I think that would be a lovely place to do it. So I would like the lighting, not till dusk, but until that area has cleared out. But I don't want too much highlighting. I like the idea of lighting being low and subtle, but safe. The name, I think Ladyface Greenway is a beautiful name, so I have no problems with that. I do agree that as much shade as possible, because if people are going there at lunchtime, I mean, some people may go and get takeout from one of the restaurants, and then they'll want to sit in the shade and eat. So any form of shade we can provide, I think would be good. So it's just, okay. It's not this one, it's the...
That's what I would call rustic modern.
Right, so this one is.
Right.
But where's the one with the hand? Oh, this is with the more metal.
Yeah, so now if you switch to the other one, you would see more just what I would call rustic.
Alternative two, can we?
Erica, would you advance the slide?
Isn't this the more modern one?
No.
That's the old.
So you can see it's, you know, it's brown.
Right. Okay. And
no
then,
offense to brown.
Yeah. Okay. And then back to one. Okay. So I'm comfortable with one.
And I do want to say that if you like that aesthetic, it doesn't mean we would be getting that bench, those trash bins, or that picnic. It's just to give you a feel for rustic modern versus
Yes.
rustic.
Okay, so I will vote for rustic modern. Did you need my input on?
I think you just
I've
gave it,
covered
right,
it?
on that? And
The
the
arbor.
lighting you talked about, and the name. and
Yes.
and
Well, the
green
arbor, that's shade,
of the-
isn't it? So, yes, I would be in favor of that.
Of the arbor.
But again, to be compatible with what's there already.
Okay.
If I may,
Thank you for your input.
I hope this isn't inappropriate. If it's possible for the city council to provide feedback on arbors at both entrances, one or the other, or none at all, that would aid in our next steps as well.
Can you show that slide again as well, so that everybody can?
So if there's one on each end, that would put an arbor over the children's play area too, so that would create shade there, correct? Because that would be rather nice.
So the children's play area is actually a little bit further into the project
Oh,
site.
okay, I see, yes, sorry. Yes.
So Erica, if we could go to slide, let me find it myself. I apologize. Don't I have it? Oh, I'm sorry, it's slide 27. You'll see here, there's an arbor element that's proposed for the entrance to the site on the left, and you'll see the one on the right is, if you turned around, it's at like the opposite vantage point. There's an existing arbor. So what I think we would like to hear from the council is it appropriate to have two arbors, one private and one public at that entrance, or no? If it is, to have it be match more the one that's existing, or this more kind of free-flowing style on the left. And then also, if it feels appropriate, to have an arbor on the west side of the site, which we do not have a rendering of at this point.
Okay, so the arbor that you're showing that's private, that's with the restaurant that's currently there, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right, and so you're asking whether we should add additional one that would be public, part of our park,
Yes,
instead of with the private?
if that feels appropriate to the council.
Yes, thank you for clarifying.
May I ask a question? And I'm sorry to interrupt, but regarding the arbor, will we be putting in new mature trees? So like, what's the shade situation currently? Sorry, Councilmember Sylvester.
No, go ahead.
So along Agoura Road, there's a line of very mature trees, right? We are going to be removing, I think, some of the older pines that are kind of in bad health right now to make room for some of our oaks to grow. But as far as new trees on the site, they'll be planted rather young. And we've actually ran that past Robert Rock with Living Habitats. He seems to feel that when you plant a tree that's younger, it has more likelihood of surviving and thriving in the location it's planted in, because it learns to grow with that level of light and that level of water. And when you transport a more mature tree, sometimes it doesn't have that same survivability rate. So the plans currently are to plant 36-inch box tree, 24 and 36-inch box trees that are, going to be small at first and grow with the project.
Okay, I'll go back to Council Member Sylvester, and then I'll
Okay,
probably
so
go back to Mayor Pro Tem
I
Buckley
weigh in
Weber
on
as
the
well.
arbors. I like having an arbor at the entrance by Cornell, but I would like the arbor on the other end to be in the playground area so that there is some shade there if children are playing,
So you're
rather
saying-
than at the entrance, because you've already got the arbor from the restaurant so close.
So you're saying add 2 arbors instead of just 1? Is that your recommendation?
But the second one would be where the children will be sort of exploring.
Okay, that's good.
Thank you.
Thank you, and Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber.
Oh, well, what I would say about the arbors is I have a feeling that by the time this is all said and done, that there will be more patios in the back of the Wizen Marketplace. And so there'll probably be quite a few arbors or patios, whatever you want to call them back there. So I wouldn't, you know, I don't want, they're going to do that. And so I don't want to conflict with them. I don't want to fight with them, but it's a battle we would lose because they can do whatever they want. And, you know, Basta now has its, you know, outdoor patio, and I'm sure that that's the way of the future over on that side. And so, which I think is lovely. And I think it'll be a perfect place to be dining outdoors and overlooking this beautiful green belt. So I think it's very exciting. I think if I was going to have an arbor at all, it would be over on Cornell and not have anything at where the Wizen Marketplace entrance is. And, you know, it still should probably coordinate a little bit with what's there, but, you know, I think one is probably sufficient. And I don't mind having some sort of shade over the kids' area, but not sure that kids will be playing there for long. I mean, it's not going to really attract. It'll be super fun for 10 minutes at best, you know. But, you know, trees are important, and so we might need to think about how we're going to shade it until the trees shade it, and you know, maybe temporary shading. So, but that's all something that we can look at.
Okay, I'll amend mine and say temporary shading in that area.
And just go with the one arbor?
With the arbor
Okay.
at Cornell, yes.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Councilmember Wolf.
I'm fully comfortable moving forward with the agreement, so check with that. With the arbors, I echo Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber's opinion regarding one possibly on Cornell, and I think that's sufficient. So regarding the alternatives, I don't like the look of the alternative one bike rack. It looks like it's just room for one bike. Can we discuss what was the decision for that bike rack?
Again, we didn't get super detailed. We just looked at, in fact, I thought it was the one that went like this.
Right.
That we liked best, which there's a picture of somewhere in there. But it's basically metal, you know, or aluminum or something, whatever that material is, rather than, I guess, wrought iron would be what would be in rustic. But it's a really good point. And so, no, we would be having bike racks. You know, we expect that there's going to be a lot of bikes parked there. And the Wizen Marketplace has some bike racks, but we think that you know, we would be looking at having quite a few of them.
So from what I've seen, though, I like just from the alternate two bike rack. But so are we voting on the bike racks tonight? I mean, are we locking in?
No, you don't need to lock in. It would just be probably, I would say that what you'd be voicing an opinion on is, do you like the wrought iron ones that are wrought iron, like brown bike racks, or are you okay with like the aluminum that's, and there was one that went like this. I know I saw it somewhere, didn't I? Yeah.
If we want, we could go to slide 22. We'll bring up the bike rack that the Public Works Subcommittee liked, as well as the one option that we may not like, but those are shown on the same slide.
On the left is the one I thought we liked the best.
Yeah.
See it on the ground there?
Yeah, I like that one. It's the middle one with the helmet on top. That I think was shown for alternate one.
Yeah, I don't even know what that is, but yeah.
Okay, so then
it's actually easier to park your bike in the middle picture, but that's, you know, then you just have bikes everywhere. You know what I mean? It's like if you don't have enough bike racks, then people are putting them up against those, you know, just about anything.
Right. Okay, so for guidance, I'm not sure now what I should. I mean, I like the one that you're suggesting.
So that would be with alternative number one, and so more of the metal, I guess the explanation, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, Jessica, but it would be more like what's up on the Civic Center.
Absolutely. I think if I understand correctly, Councilmember Wolf, what I think I'm hearing you say is you like the aluminum look, but you might want us to bring alternatives that allow for more bicycles.
Yes.
Back to the subcommittee. The one that's shown there, you can actually put several, like you can see in the top right, you kind of just put them next to each other. So that was what we were suggesting. I'm not sure if I got that across clear, but we can bring more aluminum types through subcommittee to make a final selection.
Okay, then that would be my recommendation. Okay, so check that. Moving on to the name, I think it's great. I've no issue, unless it's going to be the Nate Hamburger Park. But I don't think that's on the table. So,
Hamburger.
the Hamburger Park. So I'm okay with the name. But so I think that is all the recommendations. And lighting. So lighting is the tough one. Would it be an 11 o'clock shutoff every night, or would it be on a timer, or what were you envisioning? So let's say it opened, the concerts end at 11. When would we shut it off on the late end? And I don't know if you have an answer. I don't know why I'm looking at you.
We didn't really get that far.
Okay.
Kind of the decision was, all of our parks close at dusk. So in the winter, that could be 6 o'clock at night or 5 o'clock at night. In the summer, it could be 8 o'clock at night. And so the mayor and I kind of felt like that was too restrictive for nighttime. But we didn't come up with, whether or not they'll be on a timer. My guess is if Agoura Road is lit up all night, that at least some of this would be lit up, but not all of it. I mean, we can work on that.
Well, I mean, we want people to feel safe walking through it. Also be sensitive that it's now open space directly across the street,
Right.
permanent open space. So however we can find the balance for that.
Right.
I guess that's my
Yeah,
recommendation.
and I think that's a great one. I mean, that's how we felt too. Not to have a hard and fast rule that it closes at dusk, because it would be almost impossible to enforce that too.
Right.
Right. I mean, people are going to be walking through, to get back to their cars, to wherever they had dinner and things like that. But yes, the right across the street is open space. And right now there's nothing on Agoura Road. So, but we do need to be mindful of not having it be too light.
So I guess the flexibility would be my recommendation, but I do want to highlight how much I enjoy those ground lighting that light up the path and how wonderful I think those look at other projects in the region, and I think that that's going to look really nice. So I think with that can...
Okay, two clarifications. Arbor or not Arbor? And how
so,
many?
Arbor at Cornell.
Okay. So the one Arbor.
One Arbor.
Okay.
And the flexibility of a shaded area if the committee...
And you would prefer on the lighting, like if currently we have the 2 lights on the light poles, would you recommend one, just to have minimum, like 1 light instead of 2 in that area?
I would recommend 1 light instead of 2 for that area.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Those are the clarifications I needed.
Thank you, Mayor.
You got it. And Councilmember Lopez.
Thank you. First, I want to say this packs a lot into a little tiny space. And so, really kudos for the very, very thoughtful work that's been put into it. It's so exciting, and it kind of has a little bit of everything. So thank you for that. And I just want to say how happy I am that Robert Rock is partnering with us, because obviously we've worked with him on Wildlife Crossing, and he's just a great voice, and I love that he's continuing the partnership. So I want to say those 2 things. Of course, the name has to be Ladyface. I love that. I would expect nothing else, and sorry, Nate. Hamburger Park was a close second, but, it's tough to compete with Ladyface. So I think that's just so perfect, and so I love that. I love the Ladyface name there. So Ladyface name, totally fine with the use agreement. It sounds like that's very standard, and protective of the park, and I can't imagine that that's going to be a problem. So all good to go ahead with the use agreement. The style, I definitely like the rustic modern more than the plain rustic. I feel like my kitchen is rustic and it's not aging well. So from personal experience, but no, I do really appreciate the clean package look. I think that's very sleek, with the ability to have that feel of open space and nature and, authentic nativeness. I like it. So definitely like alternative one with the rustic modern. I like a good arbor, but I can't really picture what you're saying. Like I wish I could see renderings of the different options. I think an arbor is really nice and cozy. I would be fine with two, but if the consensus is one, and kind of building on the what's existing, that's fine too. But I like a good arbor. I'd be open. I'd be open to a second one, but definitely we'll go with the consensus here. And then finally, the lighting. I mean, I think it really goes back to the discussions we had with the lights along Agoura Road when they were put in. We've worked on that a lot. They were put in before the village has really, been built out. And so it was like a sore thumb. It was out of place. It was too bright at the time for what was there. And so I appreciate what we've done with that in being able to keep it safe, public safety minimums, lighting minimums, shielding, frosting, all of that, because when the village gets built, we can always adjust that later if it's not enough. And if we have to go brighter later, there will be other things impacting that. So I kind of want to go along that same feel, in that we have to have that minimum standard. I agree that, whether or not that park is closed, people will go there. If they're after, a Canyon Club concert, or, people may have one too many drinks. So, you're not going to stop people from going through there. And I wouldn't want, to encourage any havoc to be taking place there. So I would definitely want a minimum standard of lighting. Agree, I love the footpaths. I think we've seen work from Ms. Forte in that area in Westlake Village on some of the paths that you designed there. It's lovely. So I would just say, similar to the lighting we have now, we'll put the foundation in place so that we can adjust it later if need be. We can keep it on longer. We can up it later if it turns out that it's not enough. But definitely I would err on going as minimum as possible right now while nothing's built there, because I don't want it to be the sore thumb like the lights on Agoura Road were. So I feel like we're all kind of on the same page there. So I think that's it.
Thank you for your comments. On my comments, I think I pretty much agree with what everybody's said. So, I mean, the overall style, definitely like the more modern look. On the entrance with the arbor, I definitely think, especially, I think the majority of people will probably park either right there on the corner that's the current parking lot, and then walk into the park, or maybe walk to the restaurant and then walk into the park, so either way. And I think it would be nice to have that arbor as kind of like an entrance way and provide lots of shade. So I think that's a great thing on it. And so I would definitely would like that. And I like the idea of having not too much lighting. And so I like kind of having the one light instead of two big lights. And so I also would like to have the walkway lights as well. I think that's important. And then the name, obviously, Ladyface. We talked about it during the subcommittee, so I'm definitely fine with that as well. And then also, I understand the circumstances of the Los Angeles County Flood Control District kind of giving us this kind of only option. And so I'm fine with it, and I'm pretty comfortable that everything's going to be fine, even if we have a flood here in Agoura, that it would still be okay going forward. So I think with that, with the rest of the input that we got, I think those are the, looks like that the consensus is the overall style, number one, with the, at least having the one arbor at the entranceway at Cornell, the lighting, having the more of one instead of dual lighting, having one light with the pathway lighting, and having the name Lady Faced Greenway. I think, so that's what I'll call for a motion and a second to adopt those aesthetic choices, along with approving the use agreement number 23-36 with the Los Angeles County Flood Control District, and authorizing the mayor to execute the use agreement number 23-36 on behalf of the city council. Do I have a motion and a second?
Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber makes the motion.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second. Deborah Klein Lopez.
Thank you. I will now defer to the city clerk for a roll call vote.
Councilmember Lopez.
Aye.
Councilmember Sylvester.
Aye.
Councilmember Wolf.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber.
Aye.
Mayor Anstead.
Aye.
Mayor Anstead, you have approval 5-0.
Thank you very much. Are there any comments from staff? All right, any comments from city council?
Yeah,
Councilmember Wolf?
I'll start off. This is such an exciting project that checks so many boxes. Improving our water quality, improving biodiversity, walkability. And thank you for council members on the committee, for the Public Works Committee, for the work you put in on this. Really appreciate it. And thank you for bringing it back for this discussion. And thank you to the staff for putting this together. This is going to be another one of our jewels in the city. It's very exciting. This wasn't something that needed to be done, but it's something that should be done. And we should be looking at underutilized portions of the city. It's expensive and it's hard, but you guys had the imagination and the political will to do it. And so I really appreciate the work that has gone into this. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Yep.
I'd just like to follow up on what Councilmember Wolf said, and just to clarify for our residents that no general city funds are being used towards this, correct? We have grants to fund it.
City manager, I think, might weigh in on that. Go ahead.
Yes, correct. The art and public places, although it's not general fund, is our money, but you're right, it's not general fund allotted. Any other comments from city council? Awesome.
I guess I would just say thank you all for your input on this project. It means a lot to all of us. It's been a long time coming, and it's still a long way off, but we're getting there. And I think you had great questions and great comments. So thank you for all of that, for your help to get this moving.
And can I just add one more thing?
You
Nothing
sure
to do
can.
with the park, but I would like to thank our staff for a wonderful weekend. I know there was the movie in the park, and then the concert and the laser show. So thank you all for supporting our community and providing such wonderful entertainment.
Thank you. Awesome. All right. So the next regular meeting of the City Council will be July 26, 2000. Oh, excuse me. The regular meeting of the City Council on July 26, 2023 has been canceled. The next regular City Council meeting will be held at 6 p.m. on Wednesday, August the 9th, 2023 in the council chambers of the Civic Center. It is anticipated that members of the public will have the opportunity to participate in person in the council chambers or by remote video conferencing. At this time, we will adjourn tonight's meeting. Will the maker of the motion to adjourn please state your name?
Councilmember Sylvester so moves.
Got it. Do I have a second?
I'll second. Deborah Klein Lopez.
Thank you. I'll defer to the clerk for a roll call vote.
Councilmember Lopez.
Aye.
Councilmember Sylvester.
Aye.
Councilmember Wolf.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Buckley Weber.
Aye.
Mayor Anstead.
Aye.
Mayor Anstead, you have approval 5-0.
Thank you very much. This meeting is now adjourned.